Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. For those that are new to Forest Adventures with Scott, I appreciate you clicking on the video, and I welcome you to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button if what you see is helpful and beneficial or just enjoyable. Today we're out here and we're looking at the 5 W's of wilderness camping and survival. A lot of emphasis is put on the 5 C's and the 10 C's of survival and wilderness camping and adventures, but you don't see a lot of information on the 5 W's. And the 5 W's actually just focuses on location of wilderness camping, the best solution for a campsite that is safe, and there are resources. So that's what we're looking at today, are the 5 W's: wind, water, wood, widowmaker, and wildlife. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about wind. As you see, I've set up my shelter back here, and before I did that, I went through those 5 W's, and the first thing that I did was check the wind direction. Today it's hardly any wind. I haven't had a breeze come through here, but this situation is designed to block the wind. So I have set up in this concave little area right here in hopes that if the wind were to pick up, this little concave in this hillside would block some of that wind. Other things that you can do when looking for a site to combat wind is the direction that your shelter is set up. So if you do find your campsite and you've made sure you're all clear of widowmakers, which we'll get to, if there is a wind direction, you want your shelter, whether it be a bush shelter, a tarp, or a tent, facing in the direction where the bottom is, the wind is coming over. You don't want the wind pushing against your shelter in your face. Wind can be a beast. It can bring your core temperature down. In a survival situation, the direction of where you set up your shelter could mean life or death. So, but like I said, today, no wind. So let's move on to number 2 of the 5 W's. Okay, number 2 on the 5 W's is water. And there are 2 different things to think about water when you're setting up your shelter: erosion and a water source. We are about 30 or 40 feet from our shelter right now, and we have this creek right here. I got an Nalgene bottle that I can fill up here. Also, always carry this life straw as a backup. I would rather boil my water, which you see right there, and get a hard rolling rapid boil on it. But anyway, water is important. As far as erosion, you definitely want to set up your shelter in a place where there's no sign of water runoff. Now, I will say in that concave on that hill, there is some runoff, but I see a trail that has water running away from the shelter. Okay, number 3, and in my opinion, the most important of the 5 W's as far as safety: widowmakers. These are deadly. The first thing you want to do before you find where your water is eroding from and your water source, obviously you want to be close to a water source, is to check for widowmakers. And if you don't know what a widowmaker is, it is dead branches on trees that can impale you or whoever you're with, can come crashing down on your shelter there. Could be deadly. So I always, no matter if I'm backcountry camping, I'm campground camping, and I'll get to a story about that in a second, or just off for a lunch on the side of the trail, always look up. Always look up and see if you see any dead branches, any dead trees, especially if you're settled in for the night. You can look at the top of the trees and tell if you see any dead branches. There'll be no leaves. Now, I will say this: in the late fall and winter, it gets real tricky because obviously the leaves have fell. It's harder to distinguish what's rotten and what's healthy. So in that situation, I try to stay far away from a big tree. And honestly, in the winter, you're not going to get that much protection from the wind without the foliage on the tree. Okay, I mentioned that there was an instance in a campground where we discovered a widowmaker. Me and a friend of mine were camping. I was across the street in a yurt and he was in his camper, and we were just sitting around having something to eat, and I just happened to look up and noticed a fairly large rotten branch on a big red oak. And so we let the rangers know about that. They didn't extract that limb that weekend, but the next time we were in that campground, we noticed that it had been taken out. So like I said, don't trust just a state park or national park to look out for your own safety when it comes to widowmakers. Make sure you look out for yourself. Always look up. Okay, number 4 on the 5 W's of wilderness camping and survival is wood. You want to find a place where you can have access to downed wood. If it's a situation where it is cold or you need to boil water, you want to have plenty of wood around. You don't want to go cutting live trees down, but this area right here is full of wood, down wood. Now some of it's rotten, but there's enough of it that is not rotten that would get you through the night. And always bring a handsaw in your kit. I keep one in my backpack and I keep one in my bug out bag. So part of those TNC's items goes along with the 5 W's. You don't want to go out in the wilderness and have this knowledge of the 5 W's, but not have your 10 C's. All your items that you need to enjoy a wilderness camp out or in a survival situation. So a handsaw, it doesn't have to be big, but something that can get wood a little bit bigger than twigs, because what's going to happen with twigs is it's just going to burn up and you're going to be up all night feeding that fire. So, you know, if you can find something, you know, wrist size or bigger and you can saw through that, that's a plus. But wood is important to get through the evening. Okay, number 5 on the 5 W's of wilderness camping and survival. Wildlife. Okay, so with wildlife, before you set up your shelter, tent, tarp, you want to look out for signs of animal activity, whether that be a game trail or scat or just remnants of animal activity. Now, if you're in a survival situation where you need to hunt, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're in bear country or something like that, you probably want to stay away from those game trails. In the area that I live in, there's a sighting of black bears occasionally. No mountain lions in our immediate area, but places that I go, I'm sure that there is mountain lion activity. So just be mindful of that. It's not a deal breaker, but you kind of want to stay off those game trails for your own safety. Anyway, so wrapping up the 5 W's, it is something that probably gets overlooked by a lot of people. I hope the video has helped some people understand that it is important to figure out the ideal spot for your shelter. Now, I know there'll be times in, like I said, survival situations where you're tired, you're hungry, you're cold, whatever. That might be the exception of bypassing some of those rules. I would say if you had to pick one, pick that Widowmaker. And water, I mean, you got to have water. If you're out of water, you need a water source. Those 2 out of the 5 would be the 2, even if I was tired and hungry and exhausted. I would search out those situations where I just kept myself safe. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you gathered something from it. And anyway, peace and be safe out there. Have a great day.